Hey guys, back again. I just got out of Halloween 1978, just watched it in the theater. Um, and I wanted to talk about how my perception of Halloween, of 1978 Halloween, and how I feel about it versus the reactions I got out of the audience in this viewing of Halloween, seeing it for the first time in a theater. Now, this is an interesting video I want to do because I want to talk about, like, I feel so different about Halloween, like the original, and going into a theater in 1978 watching the original. It's really kind of baffling in a way because the reactions from people I think actually are really in a way cool, and I think that it in a way watching their reactions to mine, which are different in a lot of ways but same in a lot of ways. I wanted to talk about that. So first off, the thing I noticed in this, watching it in the theater, is that a lot of people laughed a lot in this movie at moments that were supposed to be scary. And I still think, for the most part, this movie still is creepy. But there are so many moments where watching this with an audience, they laughed at a lot of things. There were so many times where the moments where Michael Myers is just standing there, like at the beginning, whenever he's standing at the bush and goes behind, or whenever he's looking at Laurie while he's in the hanging laundry, um, or the clothes hanging, like scenes like that. Literally, the audience I was with laughed out loud and thought it was so hilarious, and I thought it was so strange that the way I perceive it is just so different. Where I think that actually is really, really creepy, but then watching it with an audience, a lot of them thought it was funny, and it's such a weird. Like, as I've always felt this way about things like this in this movie, but then watching it with an audience, it's so bafflingly weird, just because you see such a different perspective of what people think about this movie, um, and especially stuff like in the last 5 minutes of the movie, whenever Laurie Strode, last 10 minutes, I guess, Laurie Strode stabs Michael Myers twice, drops the knife twice, and I noticed the audience got so pissed, like both times that she did it. And I don't get pissed at that, even though it is because Jamie Lee Curtis herself did say, like, that she didn't want to drop it that many times, but they made her do it. They made her do that. They made this character vulnerable. Like, she makes dumb decisions, but you still are wanting her to survive. But watching it in the theater, people were just so mad and so annoyed every time she dropped the knife because he's obviously not dead. And there's even somebody in the audience who said, "Oh, he's not dead. He's not dead." Like, obviously. But it's just so funny to see an audience nowadays look at that and interpret it a different way, because I still think the same way they do. Like, "Oh, he's not dead. Like, she shouldn't have dropped the knife." But it doesn't bother me as much as, like, most people, because even though I've seen a lot of horror movies, I feel like it doesn't bother me that much. And I feel like a lot of people now who are watching current modern day horror movies, even now, they still get annoyed at that. And I think it's just an interesting thing that people get annoyed at those two times she drops the knife, and it's funny. And there's one moment in the movie where I still think this is strange too, where Laurie Strode has, like, she's walking down the street to her house after Linda and Annie have both gone to their houses, and she hears, like, crying, and then she walks around the corner and these kids are just trick-or-treating, and she says to herself, "Well, kiddo, I thought you outgrew superstition." And I didn't really, and I still to this day don't understand what that means. Like, it's just kind of a weird thing that she says. I didn't really get that line. It was just kind of odd. Um, and the audience thought that too. They were just like I saw some people put their hands up, like, "What? Like, what is up with this line? That's so weird." So that, I like how this audience had such a funny reaction to this movie. And there are moments where I honestly thought it was funnier with an audience in funny moments. Like, these characters, like, I feel like if I did see this in 1978, if I was alive then and saw this in 1978, I feel like I would have laughed with the audience as well. I've just never seen this with a full audience before. I've seen it with other friends, but not like an audience like in a theater until now. So it's weird seeing these jokes that I think are fine and funny, but in a theater it's way more funnier with lines like how whenever Linda says those lines like "Go get me a beer," like I think it's funny on its own, but just watching stuff like that with an audience made it even more funnier. And whenever Annie like is singing to herself, "My Paul, I'll give you all," like that song, that was really funny with an audience because everybody laughed and thought it was hilarious. And I love the fact that even to this day, like people were laughing at this movie regardless, even if it was fun, even if it was a funny moment or a scary moment. But I loved how this movie still maintains its suspense in a lot of ways, because even though people laugh at some things, just like Psycho, like movies like this are classics, but they're going to be interpreted a different way now, and it's just funny seeing with this audience that I just saw it with. But I just think it's so funny how the audience perceives like this difference in like how they interpret being scared. And like for example, like I said how earlier, how Michael Myers, whenever he's standing like walking behind the bushes, or he's standing in between the clothes hangers, or the clothes hanging up in the air, everybody's laughing at that. Or at the end, whenever he sits back up and he turns his head, everybody laughed out loud at that. And I thought that was such a, like, it's fine, but it's just such a strange thing just to see like people laughing hysterically at this. But like I said, I would have been interested to see if I could have seen this in 1978. So this was just a fun like audience reaction to this movie. Like I love the fact that just it was fun with an audience that I've never seen a full audience in a theater with in this movie. But the thing that annoyed me is that at the end of my screening for this movie in the theater is that it was literally like it had a minute or two left and the lights came up. And I was sitting there like, are you kidding me? Like seriously? And then there was one guy who came in, this awkward looking dude, just with a hat and with a big jacket, and I was like, this is creepy. Like, and I watched him to make sure he didn't do anything creepy. But like this guy came in, walked around for a second, then sat down, and never heard from him again. But he just walked in halfway into the movie, and I was like, I hope this guy's not going to shoot up the place. This guy's kind of creeping me out. But it was a weird showing because, like I said, it was fun with the audience, but then there was a lot of dumb stuff, like a guy walking in halfway through who was acting weird, and the lights came up in the last 2 minutes. So that really did bug me. So it wasn't a perfect screening, like watching this in the theater, but I thought that it was still really a fun viewing, watching with an audience. Whether I agree with how they interpret things, like with the humor, with scary moments people laugh at, I still think that this is a fun watch with an audience. So that's all I can say really. I thought that this was just a fun topic to talk about, like how this audience perceived this movie according to what I and a lot of other people do perceive, like with how scary it is or how creepy it is, but then a lot of people laughed at it. But like I said, some of the jokes in this really landed a lot more with an audience, because usually that's how it works with comedies. Like watching a comedy by myself or with maybe a friend or two, it's like it's not as funny, but then watching it with an audience, it is definitely way more funnier because the audience laughs, so you kind of have that reaction to it. So like I said, the scary parts are still scary, but they just weren't interpreted very humorous by this audience. But I can understand because they're so desensitized to what is now horror. But and the humor in this, I thought, really did work well with an audience. Like, the humor is really funny, but so this is just a weird, interesting showing, and I'm really glad I talked about it, because I just wanted to give my thoughts on how I felt about this showing. So basically, like, I've seen this movie millions of times, but I just wanted to talk about how I felt with the showing, with the audience, and how they reacted to stuff. So that's where I'll just leave it there. So tell me down below, like, if you guys have seen this in the theater, what the reaction was, or if you've seen any horror movie or movie in general, and just thought that this react like they give such a weird reaction in their showing. Like this was just a really fun a fun theater showing. So tell me down below if you had a fun theater showing like this. So thank you guys so much for watching.